Now finally, with the joinery and the hinge mortises cut in our leg blanks, we could start to focus on cutting out their shape. Okay, so we have two things to look at. The front legs are going to be cut twice and the back legs are only going to be cut once. Now where's my sample here? Okay, you see the cut on the legs, the primary cut, we've got one on one side and we got to cut it on this side as well, making this nice compound curve, which looks really attractive. So we have to keep track of which side we're cutting and we want to make sure we trace all that out ahead of time. On the back legs though, we're not going to do this on both sides. I'm only going to cut the one angle on the side because I want it to sit nice and flat and fully supported against the wall. Okay, so I'm only going to cut once on the back legs. So it all starts by tracing the template onto our legs. Okay, and this is the template that we made before. Nothing's changed there. And it's literally as easy as putting it onto the blank and then drawing with a pencil. Now here's an example so you can kind of visualize how this leg comes out of something nice and square like this. This is a leg that I had on my old hall table that I had built. This is just a prototype leg. Now you can see prototype has quite a nice curvature to it, and looking at it this way, it's almost kind of difficult to wrap your brain around how you go from a big square block to something that looks like this. So I've drawn, again, with a very similar template to what I have here, I've drawn on this blank, and you can see on the blank, the red shows the area that I'm going to cut and remove. So the first cut would be right along here, follows that line, and would remove this whole piece. But then I'm going to tape that piece back on. I'm going to tape back the cutoff because I'm going to need that again to either support the piece or to give me my cut line for the next cut. Okay, so we remove this whole section here, then I would flip it over and make my second cut along this line and remove that section there. When it's all said and done, what comes out of that block is something that looks like this. So the same concept, only now we have a slightly different shape, but it's still the same exact idea. So let me start by tracing everything on here, and then we'll be ready to rock and roll. And what I usually do is find my orientation. I have them all labeled. This is my front left leg, okay? The front left leg facing me. So I need to cut it on this angle, that's the side, and I'm going to cut it on the front face as well, at the front. So those are the two sides that I want to trace with my template. Okay, we'll start at the front, just line it up, and draw across. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the side. Move the template over there. Okay, and then I just put marks on here just so that my brain doesn't make any stupid mistakes. It lets me know what material is going to be removed. And now I can go over to the bandsaw and make my cuts.
I carefully cut along the line, getting as close as possible without actually touching it. And don't rush it, there are no points for being fast. Toward the end of the cut, I'll stop short so that the cutoff remains attached to the leg. We need that cutoff to help us with our next cut. I can't remember who reminded me about this technique, but I just wanted to say thanks. I then insert a small shim to stabilize the cutoff, and wrap it with a little blue tape. Now I can proceed with the second cut. A quick careful slice releases the first cutoff. Now the leg is all roughed out and ready for the next step.
Now if you look at our prototype leg, there's a couple more details. We've got this cut at the top here on a nice angle, and at the bottom I've removed some material from the back of the legs, and that gives it just a little bit more of a nice inside curvature to it. Because these ends are straight, so by doing that at the bottom here, it kind of almost gives you the impression that the whole leg is curved, the entire thing, when in reality it's just sort of dog-eared at the bottom, for lack of a better term. So the template now reflects that, and you can see I've removed the material down here, and I just transfer that to each of my legs. And the thing to remember with this cut is these cuts are going to be on the opposite two faces of the cuts we've already made. We've got a cut here and here, so that means that the dog-eared cuts are going to be here and here, okay, at the bottom. Now the last detail that I'm going to add to the legs is the compound angle cut at the top here. And the best tool for that is a compound miter saw.
I set both the miter angle and the bevel angle to 20 degrees.
If you have a laser, it really helps a lot to see where the blade's going to cut, but I want my blade to cut right up to this top corner. I really don't want to waste any material. Now if you don't have a miter saw, this can be a little bit of a tricky cut to do by hand, so what might make your life easier is if you make a little cradle. Okay, basically you just make this V-notch by cutting 45-degree angles. On the table saw is how I did it, just move the bevel to 45 and make 2 cuts. The cradle is perfect for holding the workpiece exactly at the angle it needs to be, so that now all you need to do is worry about making this angled bevel cut. Which shouldn't be too hard, comparatively speaking, to trying to hold the workpiece on its side, make an angled cut this way, and also make your bevel cut at the same time. That can get pretty tricky. So you might find it handy to have this little cradle around, and that eliminates at least one of the angles that you have to cut, and you could just focus on the bevel. So before doing the final smoothing and finessing of the shape of the legs, I want to put everything together with another dry fit, just as a sanity check. At this point, you could really make a mistake that can kill the whole project. So I just want to make sure all my angles are cut the right way, all the curves are on the right sides of the correct legs. There's a lot of places where you could have some errors, and that's why marking your parts and keeping them all organized and straight is really gonna, in the long run, is gonna stop you from making mistakes. And so far, so good. We're at the point now that I could probably start finessing these curves, smoothing everything out, sanding some of the parts. We can cut the shelves in the middle, and we'll get to that one thing at a time. But so far, I'm definitely happy with where we're at now. Now, I know a lot of you love it when things don't go according to plan, so this one's for you. I spent a good amount of time checking out the dry fit, looking at it from all angles, and particularly what I was interested in was the impact of cutting only one curve in the back leg and what that would look like visually. So from the front, it's not so bad. Even from an angle, it's not that bad. But as soon as you start to see the side profile, that's where it really starts to fall apart visually for me, to the point that's unacceptable. I think that looks absolutely terrible, and I can't let it go like this. So I've already decided that I absolutely must cut that curve into the back leg. Now the question is, what happens to the original design options that I had included? Do I have to change anything? And the answer is yes. The French cleat system that I was going to include back here for wall mounting, let's assume this is cleat material, was going to be flush with the back legs. Well, if I cut that curve there, you can't do that. The curve is going to start somewhere up here, so I can't be flush with the back legs. I would have to move the cleat in, which would do 2 things. It would close up my air gap, which I don't want, and it would also require me to have a much thicker cleat, actually one that sits a little bit off of the wall instead of just flush with this particular cleat. It would just complicate it a little bit, and I don't think I want to go down that road. So the whole thing with the wall hanging was just so that this would be as versatile as possible, just in case Leo wanted to wall hang it. In all likelihood, most people would take a cabinet like this and put it on a desk or put it on a table and make use of the fact that it does have feet. So honestly, I'm not too worried about it. I don't think it's that big of a deal since, like I said, I don't know that he was planning on hanging it on a wall anyway. That takes a very specific setup to allow it to be hung on a wall in the first place. So for the sake of just making this thing look as perfect as it possibly can, I'm just going to have to bail on the wall hanging. But ultimately, the design, it really benefits from it. So my conscience is clear. But the bottom line here is if you were going to design something, and even the SketchUp drawing didn't prepare me for this, so even drawing a 3D rendering is good, but it's not as good as having the material in front of you. So if you have the time and you have the luxury of building a prototype, awesome. You're going to really work out a lot of problems when you do that. But since most of us don't, we have to learn how to roll with the punches. And in this case, it was something that was unanticipated, and I don't think it's not really a setback, it just changed things a little bit. So, yeah, this is what you love, so there it is. All right, so I just cut the curves in the back legs, and I don't know about you, but I think that looks 1,000 times better. I like it. Now I can sleep easy tonight. Now I've got the cabinet on its side so that I could show you where I'm going to need to create the next groove. Here's the bottom piece, and on the back side of the bottom, I want to have a little strip of material that goes all the way across and stops everything from being able to fall out the back. But above it, it's really only going to go about maybe 1.5 inches to 2 inches high, because the whole top section is going to be wide open. I want to be able to fit big plugs through there, and I also want it to breathe really well so that heat can travel right up the back and out. So I need to create a groove all the way across, and I just mark where the leg starts, and I'm going to put a 1/2 inch groove all the way down. Fortunately, the dado blade is still set up from my last cuts on the side pieces. All I have to do is set the fence and I'm ready to go. Now, because each leg was cut separately, it's really important that we establish the start and the stop line of the curve. And it can be a little bit off from one to the other. So what I like to do is line everything up against the board just so it's all sitting flush and nice and flat. And I look for the one that's the lowest. Okay, and I can also see through the cracks where the other curves are and decide if one of those curves is a little bit lower. And I think this board here is my lowest one. And I'm going to use that as my guideline for all of them. So I'll draw a line across. So when I start working each one with the hand tools, I know that that is my borderline. I don't want to go any higher up than that where the start of the curve begins. Now, with the leg clamped into the bench, I'm going to use a number of different tools to get this curve nice and smooth. So I'm going to start with my cabinet maker's rasp, and any of these really low areas, you can see them and feel them. I'm going to go over them because those are going to take the most work, and this tool is great for that. So when doing a curve with the cabinet maker's rasp like this, a lot of times I'll alternate from an angle that's about here to something that's a little bit closer to perpendicular, always pushing forward. And it's pretty aggressive, so be careful. And remember, don't go past the line that you created. Now I've got a big gouge up here that I'm going to try and work out without going over my line. That means I need to increase the intensity of that curve just a little bit. So I'm going to have to use the tip of the rasp to get in there and do that. So you can use a lot of things at this point, including a card scraper, which is great for just smoothing out that surface, getting rid of any of those divots that might be there. Okay, you could use that. You might even, given the fact that it's such a shallow curve, you may even be able to get away with using something like a number 80 cabinet scraper. But you can always resort to a flexible sanding strip. You've seen me use this a lot before. And it's pretty straightforward. Just bend it so it conforms to the surface and it won't follow any of those little dips.